Madhwacharya by Bananje Govindacharya. This happened 700 years ago. Islam religion was already spreading in some parts of northern Bharat. On the coast of river Ganga, there was a kingdom ruled by a Muslim king. Scholars guess that he might have been Jalaluddin Khilji. He kept a large army along the coast to guard the kingdom. There was no boats to cross the river. The ruler was concerned that spies from the neighboring kingdom might enter his province. This is why such guards were positioned there. On the other side of the river there stood a majestic-looking sannyasi monk with his followers. The disciples were worried how to cross the river. The master understood their concern and gently told them, "Don't be afraid. We are here to swim across the river of life. Can't you ever cross the Ganga? Follow me into the waters without fear." The commander of the Muslim state saw them and told his men, "They must be spies from the neighboring state wearing the garb of monks. We should finish them off before they reach this shore." The leader of the monks noted their concern and in a loud voice told them, "Do not be hasty and drown yourselves. We are only a few in number. Why should you fear us? We are only coming to see your king and not to fight." The soldiers stood surprised. They saw the sannyasi leading his people boldly through the swirling waters of Ganga safely. Hundreds of sword-wielding soldiers surrounded them. "Your God is my God." The king, standing on the balcony of his palace, saw their arrival. He was surprised that a Hindu monk could reach his capital warding off his soldiers' guard. He addressed the monk, "My soldiers are standing guard to prevent the entry of spies of the neighboring country. None has so far eluded them. How is it that you, a monk, walked through them? How were you able to cross the river without boats? What is your objective in coming here?" The monk laughed, raised his finger towards the sun, and spoke in Persian, the language of the king. "The supreme God who protects you, me, and others, in fact, the whole world, is there. For you, he is Allah. For me, he is Narayana. Address him by any name you choose. The only one will answer your prayers. We are all citizens of his kingdom. It is only with his blessings that we were able to cross the river without boats. We pacified your soldiers who came to attack us. It is all his blessings. We are on our way to the north through your state." The Muslim king was deeply impressed by the monk's boldness and self-conviction and his impressive personality. He climbed down from his seat and invited him to the Rajya Sabha, that is royal court, and lavishly entertained him. He offered him a large estate and requested him to build his hermitage there. But the monk politely declined the king's offer, and the party continued the journey northwards. Who is he? Who is he? He is Acharya Madhva, a distinguished saint of Bharata, who preached to the world that God will hear in whichever language or name he is addressed. He left a great message for subsequent generations. Don't make a fuss about how should address God. You can address him in any language and by any name. Know that there is no word in the world without his name. Apart from the language we speak, the entire nature extols him. The sound of the sea, the wind that blows, the creeping of the birds, the hooting of the animals, all these are nothing but homage to God. Learn to recognize his existence in all voices and everywhere. Live with godliness. The Acharya went a step further in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita. The caste system relates more to one's nature than to one's body. It is not important to which caste one belongs at birth. His nature decides his caste. Basically, the caste system is only a division based on man's nature. A Chandala, that is untouchable, who treads the spiritual path, is a better being than a Brahmin, who is ignorant of that path and puts on an artificial appearance. In Bharat, during the 13th century, people were stubbornly practicing the caste system. It is amazing that the Acharya propagated such progressive views at such a time. The earth is blessed. Among the galaxies of Acharyas of our country, three stand out. Acharya Shankara, who preached Advaita, monism. Acharya Ramanuja, who preached Vishishtadvaita, a blend of monism and dualism. And Acharya Madhva, who preached Dvaita, dualism. This world is an illusion. Only God is true, said Shankara. God is the soul of the universe. Hence, this body is also real, said Ramanuja. This universe is a playful creation of God. Let us not try to diminish it by denouncing it, said Madhava. In old text, Acharya Madhava's Dvaita philosophy is described Tattvavada. He maintained, this world is not an illusion. God is not a magician. He signifies the duty of truth. This world should be considered as a school. Understand God's greatness. It is to credit of Karnataka that it should have contributed such a great philosopher as Madhva to the world. Acharya Madhva was a Kannadiga. He was born in a small village, Pajaka, near Udupi, on Karnataka's coast. It is a picturesque village flanked by two small hillocks. In a corner stands an ancient temple of Durga. At the foot of another hillock is a temple of Parshurama. Pajaka is a village rich in greenery. The earth on which the Acharya walked stands blessed. Every stone here stands witness to hundreds of stories relating to his earlier years. God was with me. Acharya Madhava's father was Nadiyalla Narayana Bhatta. His mother was Vedavati. The couple had desired a son for a long time. They prayed to God and performed many rituals. At last their prayers were answered. A son was born who not only enlivened his home but enlightened the whole mankind. Acharya Madhava was born on the 10th day of the bright half of the month of Ashvayuja in Shaka year Vilambi, that is 1238 AD. It was Vijayadashmi day. The child was named Vasudeva. The child, who was growing well, was very good looking. His mother, lucky to have such a nice child, people would say. They were struck by his outward appearance but could not comprehend his inner self. Sometimes the child's prank would baffle the parents who wondered, this child, not like others. A memorable eve could be recalled. Vasudeva was then 3 years old. His parents had taken him to a function in nearby Nidiur. In the midst of the celebration, Vasudeva suddenly disappeared. Nobody knew where he had gone, and the tearful parents began a vigorous search. Somebody in the street said, we saw a small child going towards Kadavur temple. Someone else said they saw a 3-year-old child crossing the fields and going towards Bananjay temple. Nadiyalla and others rushed to both the places but could not find the child there. They then came to nearby Udupi and arrived at the favorite temple of Ananteshwara. What a surprise! Vasudeva was standing before the Shivalinga there with folded hands. There were tears of joy. The Nadiyalla couples were adherent worshippers of Ananteshwara, and they found their child in his graceful presence. Vasudeva stood there smiling. "Dear Vasudeva, how did you come so far alone? How did you find the way?" asked the father. The child replied, "Father, I did not come alone. First, I went to Kanangi, that is Kodavur, and saw Shankaranarayana. From there, I went to see Mahalingeshwara of Telugu, that is Bananje. Then I came here and saw Chandramauleshwara. I saw Narayana in this Shivalinga. God was with me throughout the journey. God was my companion and showed me the way." What he told the Muslim king, which he was in his 30s, and what I uttered as a child of 3 were the same. We have arrived because God's grace. Can one ever be imbued with qualities not nourished in childhood? Yes, this cannot be easily understood by anyone. He pursues the only path shown by God. It was a child born who showed the divine path to the people. Talented child. When the child completed 3 years, his father initiated his educational lessons. One day, the lesson of practicing the alphabets was over, and next day it was repeated. Vasudeva asked his father, "Why repeat the same thing, which was over yesterday? Teach me something new." The father felt both surprised and happy. What a talented child we have, he wondered. He was struck by this child's grasping power. He was concerned that the child may be affected by somebody's evil eyes. His mother would wave before him some pepper and other things to ward off evil, and pray for his welfare. The father continued to teach the child at home. Before long, Vasudeva was able to read all the books and to try to understand them. It was a pleasure to hear his readings from the texts. He had a finer voice and a purity of expression. When Vasudeva was 5, his mother took him on a visit to a nearby place called Niyampalli. It was evening, and the Puranic discourse was in progress. People were listening with keen interest to the discourse by Madhithaya, Shivabhatta, well-known Puranic. At one stage, Vasudeva, sitting beside his mother, got up and said, "Respected Puranic, the meaning in Purana text says one thing and you are saying another." Shivabhatta became annoyed at the boy's insolence, but Vasudeva narrated the meaning of the concerned verse in a lucid manner. People were pleased and agreed with him. On another occasion, Nadiyalla himself was corrected by his son. He was also a well-known Puranic. Once, during a discourse, he would not remember the meaning of a discourse. He would not remember the meaning. He avoided the word and continued. Vasudeva stood up and said, "Father, you have named all the tree, but did not mention Lakucha and its meaning. It means Hebbalasu, doesn't it?" Nadiyalla did not feel insulted. He felt happy that he learned the meaning of the word from his son. He felt proud to be the father of such an intelligent boy. When Vasudeva was 7, his father performed his Upanayan, that is sacred thread-wearing ceremony, according to custom. and then assigned him to a guru for studying Vedas and classics. Studies as a disciple of Tontatilya, a respected Vedic scholar of that period. Tontatilya felt the boy's manner a bit strange. The boy would appear only at the time of the lessons and would spend the rest of the time in the playfield. In the field, Vasudeva, with a strong physique beyond his age, would be surrounded by his playmates. Each day it was a different game. One day it is running. Vasudeva would come first. Another time it is swimming, and he would be the first to reach the goal. It was wrestling the other day, and though the entire band of his playmates attacked him, he would humble them with terrific blows. His mates were astonished at the powers of Vasudeva, whom they considered Hanuman in swimming and Bhimasena in weightlifting. Guru Totantilla would not approve of the boy's behavior. He felt he was not studying properly and at once chided him. "Oh, you are a master of knowledge. You learn things without reading. Let us see. Recite the suktas, that is, hymns, you have been taught so far." Vasudeva sat cross-legged and recited in a ringing clear voice all the hymns in the correct pattern and without a single mistake. The Guru gave up testing him. Vasudeva's studies and sports both continued. Wrestling between the master and the disciples. Acharya Madhava attached much importance to good physique. People of our country should be strong both in mind and body. This was his life's message. If the body is weak, the growth of the intellect too will be weak. But one should take care to be strong not in the body alone but in the mind too. The Acharya made it compulsory that even the monks' disciples, apart from others, should practice physical exercise. He would always tell them, "Don't bow to anybody but God. Hold your head high and learn to live without fear." An incident occurred when the Acharya was in his 40s. Once he was staying at Varanasi with 15 of his disciples. He had happened to hear them discussing about their physical strength. He called them and laughingly said, "Many times I have tested your intellect. Now I want to test your physical strength. All of you should fight me at the same time. If anybody hesitates and stays behind, he would be violating the Guru's injunction." It was a strange wrestling bout between the Acharya, now in his 40s, and the 15 disciples who were around 20. The Acharya warded off his disciple with a single blow to each. All of them fell to the ground. Flexing his arm further, the Acharya smilingly asked them, "Why have you fallen down like this? Free yourself from a grip and stand up." The devotees, still prostrate, pleaded, "Your every finger seems to us like an iron grip. Please free us." The disciples knew their master was well versed in Vedantic philosophy, but he could also be a sturdy wrestler when occasion arose. The hand which carries the sacred stick wields an axe. Through another incident, the Acharya taught his disciples how to face dangers in life. The party was proceeding to Badri. They were passing through mountains and thick jungles. The disciples carried the bundles containing their clothes and articles of worship on their heads. Suddenly, a band of dacoits confronted them, wielding axes. The disciples became frightened, but the Acharya smiled, called one of the disciples, Upendra Tirtha, and said, "Why are you standing like this? When your fellow men are facing danger, the hand that carries the danda should also know how to wield an axe. Go forth." Upendra Tirtha was aroused by his Guru's call. He charged the dacoits like a storm, seized an axe from one of the dacoits and began swinging it with great force. Shocked by this heroic act of a monk, the dacoits ran away. "I am going to be a sannyasi." The manner in which the Acharya, who lived like a soldier of philosophy, took to sannyasa and became a monk was also strange. Vasudeva was then 11 years old. One early morning he came to Udupi. There lived a famous saint, Achyuta Prajna, and the boy became his disciple. Nadiyallah came looking for his son, but Vasudeva told him, I have to fulfill the mission of my life. Leave me alone, I am going to become a sannyasi. Two other sons born to the Nadiyallah couple had died very young. What should the old father do when the only surviving son says that he wants to become a monk? But the boy was determined. The father prostrated before him and begged, Don't throw us on the streets by taking to sannyasa. Vasudeva answered, It is wrong for a father to prostrate before his son who is not a sannyasi. Now that you have bowed to me, it means that you have accepted me as a monk. And he answered all his father's arguments. Nadiyallah then tried to make one last effort. I may agree, but how can you convince your mother? Leave it to me, the boy replied. The father returned home and forewarned his wife, At any rate, do not agree for his taking to sannyasa. But Vasudeva had already decided on the mode of approach to his mother. If you want your son to be before you, agree to my becoming a monk. Otherwise, you will never see me again. His mother had to agree. She was only worried that there would not be a son to look after them in old age. Vasudeva had a ready reply to that also. He said, All right, I will not take to sannyasa till another son is born to you. Vedavati gave birth to a son the following year. This boy served his parents till their end, then took sannyasa from Acharya himself. He later came to be renowned as Vishnutirtha. He was a great monk, living only on fruits and leaves, and spent his lifetime in penance. He was a worthy brother to Acharya, Purna Prajna, Anandatirtha, Madhava. The parents had to consent, and Vasudeva was initiated into sannyasa by Saint Achyuta Prajna. He then came to be known as Purna Prajna. He was then a boy of 12. About 40 days after he assumed sannyasa, Vasudeva Pandita, an eminent interpreter of philosophy, and some others came to Udupi. Achyuta Prajna sent his young disciple to argue with them. The 12-year-old boy easily overcame the arguments of these stalwarts who could not answer him satisfactorily. Achyuta Prajna was filled with joy at the astounding knowledge and scholarship of the boy. He installed Purna Prajna on the official seat of the Vedanta and named him as Anandatirtha. Madhava was Purna Prajna's religious name, and later he came to be renowned by the name. From that time onwards, Acharya Madhava's entire life was devoted to the propagation of Vedic philosophy. He was not unnecessarily provoking others to arguments. If anybody came to engage him in philosophical debate, he would successfully argue and defeat them. Hundreds of arrogant scholars who came to challenge him had to go back with their heads bowed in defeat. Countrywide tour of the Dharmic Renaissance. Acharya Madhava toured the whole country to propagate his version of philosophical interpretation called Tattva Veda. He shared it gladly with anybody who came to him. He taught and trained many devotees. He wrote as many as 40 books. These have been a spiritual treasure for subsequent generations. Seemingly, they are simple narration which every children could understand. Actually, they are classical works which every mature scholars have to study deeply to understand the Vedic philosophy. Soon after becoming a sannyasin, Acharya Madhava visited famous religious shrines in the south, including Kanyakumari, Rameshwaram, Srirangam, and Anantashayanam. Thrice he travelled up to Badrinath shrine in the snowy Himalayas. He dedicated his first work, Gita Bhashya, to Guru Vedavyasa at Badri. He stayed there for some time and wrote commentaries on Brahma Sutras. Wherever he went, people were highly pleased with his wonderful discourse. It was a time when the influence of Islam was spreading. Christianity too was making headway. The country was fast facing a piquant situation under these alien religious influences. Beside, the Indian people themselves were helpless spectators to squabbles among their own religious sects, various castes, creed, etc. The Acharya toured the country at such a time of disturbed philosophical situation and brought reassurance to the people. They were impressed with this saint and listened to his discourse with devout attention. His following steadily grew. Upon the return of Acharya to Udupi, his guru, Achyuta Prajna, also read his disciples' commentary on the Gita. He discussed with the Acharya about some doubts that had arisen in his mind, and satisfied, he himself became a follower of Acharya Madhava. Thus, the Shishya who offered initiation to his own guru earned a permanent place in the hearts of the people. The Acharya's prime disciple was Padmanabhacharya. There were also 8 other intimate disciples: Hrishikesha Tirtha, Narsimha Tirtha, Janardana Tirtha, Upendra Tirtha, Vamana Tirtha, Vishnu Tirtha, Rama Tirtha, and Adhoksha Tirtha, Adhokshaja Tirtha. These 8 saints later became the founders of the Ashtamathas, that is 8 mutts at Udupi. The installation of Sri Krishna. According to the ancient documents, the story of the installation of Sri Krishna at Udupi runs thus. A ship had left the shores of Dwaraka. When the other cargo had been kept, some mounds of gopi chandana, that is sandalwood paste. When the ship was on the seashore of Malpe, a storm broke. The ship hit a boulder, broke and sank. One day, Acharya Madhava awoke from his meditation and suddenly left for the shore of Malpe. There he got men to fish in the waters, and they brought up an idol of Sri Krishna from the seabed. The Acharya installed it at his mutt in Udupi and worshipped him for several years. Thus, Sri Krishna has been the deity present at Udupi for the last 7 centuries, blessed countless worshippers. This is the most ancient accepted version of the installation. They stole the books. Acharya Madhava made Udupi his headquarters and was engaged in his philosophical pursuits. He, however, had to face considerable opposition. When a society reaches a state of stagnation, great men appear on the scene to give it a new drive. Such men who set about making efforts towards the improvements of the society, though they may become popular, have also to face opposition regarding the principles and approach they advocate. Acharya Madhava was no exception to this. Many raised a hue and cry that the Acharya was disturbing the established ancient order. When people could not confront him successfully on the strength of spiritual texts, some took to shameful and petty ways. Attempts were made to break his danda. Efforts were also made to kill him with the help of wrestler Kodinjadi brothers. A smear campaign also took place, but the Acharya could not be cowed down, and his opponents had to suffer failure. By this time, the Acharya had a priceless collection of books. During his travels across the country, he had collected many rare texts for his philosophical research. He had mentioned several such rare works in the books he wrote. His library was a treasured possession, and Padmatirtha went to the extent of stealing these books. Blessed were they who saw him. This theft took place at Kasargod, the capital of Tulunandlu. Hearing about it, Jayasimha the king felt sad. He managed to seize the books from Padmatirtha and sent a request to the Acharya to come for a visit. The king accorded a ceremonial reception to the Acharya on his arrival. He climbed down first from his palanquin and walked to receive the Acharya. Soldiers lined up on both sides of the road. The king bowed to the Acharya reverentially. Both then walked to Vishnu Mangala temple. It was a memorable sight. Devotees and disciples walked in the front singing devotional prayers. Beside the Acharya walked the king with folded hands. The Acharya's personality created an instant impression upon the people. He stood out in the assembly looking as if carved out on the basis of Lakshana Shastra, a tall, broad-shouldered person. A smile adored his face. Those who saw him felt blessed. Message of service to the world. Trivikrama Pandita was the brother of Shankara Pandita who looked after the Acharya's library. None in the area could match his scholarship. Trivikrama Pandita entered into a vehement debate with Acharya and showered him with many questions. The Acharya, calm and smiling, answered every question. Their debate went on for 15 days, and Trivikrama Pandita, with his doubts cleared and queries answered, became the Acharya's disciple. The replies the Acharya gave him came as a great revelation to the whole country. There is one God, the embodiment of positive divinity. He is addressed as Narayana. He is also called Ishvara, Brahma, Vishnu, and by other names. You can address him by any name. This life is a reflection. The original image is God. We should understand the original through the reflection. You cannot comprehend him without realizing your soul. First understand yourself and then you can understand him. The Vedas are basic truths. One should not become a slave to argumentation to know these basic principles. There is always the possibility of a debate losing its track. We should surrender ourselves to the Vedas to realize the truth. Never forget your duty and its related action. Real duty is your helping others who suffer more than you. This worldly duty is the fee you pay God, who is the Lord of the universe. The world is God's wonderful creation. Try to understand His greatness. Also, know your own limitation and surrender yourself to Him. This is the only path for your salvation. The Acharya wrote the famous Prashta Natraya commentaries on Gita, the 10 Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras. He wrote the well-known classic Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya, a masterly analysis of the Mahabharata and the Puranas. Vishnamrita Mahamava, an anthology of Puranic verses. He also wrote commentaries on the Rig Veda and the Bhagavata. He is the author of Tantrasara Sangraha, dealing with iconography, and unique Thiti Nirnaya work on mathematics. He wrote many other significant works. The Acharya was proficient in music too. He has composed many beautiful songs. Dwadasha Stotra is a distinguished musical creation. Once after touring Goa, the Acharya was camping at a place called Pushpe. People there had heard of his knowledge of music and his fine voice. They requested him to sing and he agreed. That music was enchanting. Listeners could not believe that a male singer had such a wonderful voice. Last trip to Badri. Thus the Acharya's whole life was devoted to singing the praise of God. He faced his problems, opposition and difficulties boldly. As a young boy, he had crushed with his foot a poisonous snake which came to bite him. The Acharya knew no fear. He never bowed to anyone and always held his head high. He was clear about his life's mission and how to achieve it. He lived the life of a dynamic sannyasi and had a reassuring effect on all who came to him. After leading fruitful life till he was 79, on the 9th day of the first fortnight of Magha in the year Pingala, that is 1317 AD, Acharya Madhava took leave of his disciples and left for Badri. None saw him afterwards. This day is observed as Madhvanavami, when people pay homage to the great Acharya. Here ends a short biography of Sri Madhwacharya. Om Tat Sat. Om Sri Krishnarpanamastu.